My name is Perry Hurst. Appreciate, said in an email, but appreciate Dallas taking the class while I was gone and Tommy filling in for me concerning the sermon. I think I was able to listen to what was recorded anyway from those time periods and enjoyed listening to the class as well as the sermon. Come on down. We've been waiting for you. I don't know. I thought we would take a few minutes and after we have a prayer and lead into Leah and Rachel by asking a few questions about Jacob and his travels. If you were able to read the email, you saw some of that. Mark, would you word us in a prayer? Thank you.
Dear Lord, thank you for this day that you've given us, this opportunity to be together. We're mindful of those who are not able to be with us due to sickness today, and pray that you would strengthen them and bring them back to us. Thank you for your word that you've given us. Pray that you'd help us as we open it today to find the things in it that will be useful in our lives, that we can be better Christians, better people, and more pleasing to you. That you be with Brother Perry and the other teachers and give them a recollection of the things that they prepared to tell us so that we might make them useful. That you continue with us in our service today. It's our service.
Amen. So we're starting with chapter 27 and 28 simply because Jacob, as we follow Jacob and Jacob's travels, he leads us to Leah and Rachel. And as some of the questions from chapter 27 and chapter 28, where are we as far as Jacob? Where are we as far as Isaac, Rebekah, Jacob, and Esau in chapter 27 and chapter 28? What part of Jacob's life are we picking up with in chapter 27, chapter 28? His birth? Jacob, and that makes somebody mad. It makes who mad? Esau. And why? He's the firstborn, and he had sold his birthright, etc. But so Jacob is blessed, and how does Esau feel about that? He's mad. In fact, Esau determines what? He's going to kill him. And so Jacob's going to leave, and Rebekah tells him to go to who? To Laban. And the first question is, where does Laban live? Okay, I say Haran, I'm not sure what, but Haran or Haran. So that's where Jacob lives. That's where Laban lives. And where does Jacob travel from to get there? Where is Jacob living at this point in time? Okay, how do we know Beersheba? That's right. How do we know that? Okay, look at Genesis 20. Go back to chapter 26, verse 33, verse 34. So he called it Sheba. Therefore, the name of the city is Beersheba to this day. And even earlier mentions in verse 23. He went up from there to Beersheba. So they're living in Beersheba, and so he's going to go to Haran. And we had a map not too long ago. We're just using this same map. But so he's at the time whenever Jacob decides to leave, he's in Beersheba, and he first travels and he gets to Bethel, and then ultimately he's going to keep traveling and go to Haran. So here's Beersheba. Where's Haran from here? It's not on the map, but yeah, so you're going to be way up here northeast, and so and one of the searches I did as far as the mileage and so forth indicated that it was about 500 miles from Beersheba to Haran. And so Jacob's going to travel this distance, 500 miles. One estimate said if he, of course, I don't know how, seemed like he made it pretty quick to Bethel, but one estimate said if he traveled 25 miles per day, it'd take him about 20 days to get there. But he's going to head to Haran. He's leaving Beersheba. We asked question 3. We've kind of given one answer already. Give 2 reasons why Jacob made this journey. The one reason why Jacob made the journey, he had to get out of town. You look at the last part of chapter 27. We already gave that answer. But verse 41 of chapter 27, Esau bore a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him. And Esau said to himself, the days of mourning for my father are near. Then I will kill my brother Jacob. Now the words of her elder son Esau were reported of Rebekah. She sent and called her younger son Jacob and said to him, behold, your brother Esau is consoling himself concerning you by planning to kill you. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice and rise, flee to Haran to my brother Laban, and stay with him a few days until your brother's fury subsides, until your brother's anger against you subsides, and he forgets what you did to him. Then I will send and get you from there. Why should I be bereaved of you both in one day? And she also said, Rebekah says to Isaac, I'm tired of living because of the daughters of Heth. If Jacob takes a wife from the daughters of Heth, like these from the daughters of the land, what good will my life be to me? Jacob makes this journey because he's got to get out of town. His brother's going to kill him. Why else does he make the journey? To get the wife. And, to get a wife and not from the Canaanites. And that's what Rebekah alludes to there in verse 46. And then as chapter 28 starts, it says, so Isaac called Jacob and blessed him and charged him and said to him, you shall not take a wife from the daughters of Canaan. Arise, go to Paddan Aram, to the house of Bethuel, your mother's father, and from there take to yourself a wife from your daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. May God Almighty bless you, etc. Yes.
Leaving too, because he does have the wives. So are they 40 years old? Is Jacob 40 years old?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. I think he is. Now, I didn't research that in detail, but I think that's what that means. But
I read something that maybe he's as old as in his 70s.
Yeah. One estimate I saw was 77. I don't know. I didn't research enough to give some kind of answer on it, but I think he is older, not a young man at this point in time. Yeah. Yeah, and I don't remember. I don't remember the reasoning given for the 70 figure, but. Anyway, so Jacob's going to get out of town. We just read it. How is this next question? How is Jacob related to Laban? Nephew, Laban's his uncle. Rebekah, Laban, brother, sister. And so how would Jacob be related to Rachel and Leah? Okay, they're going to be they're cousins. And I also asked the question, did Jacob expect to return to the land of Canaan? And return, he's going there to get a wife. He's hoping to get a wife. Does he expect to return? Okay, what?
Well, when he leaves after that, he's going to take possession of the land of Abraham, and then God tells him that he's going to bring him back. 28:15.
Okay, so if you somebody just read chapter 20. Virginia, do you have that already? Okay, whoever has chapter 28, verse 13 through 15. Okay.
And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord, the God of Abraham your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie I will give to you and to your offspring. Your offspring shall be like the dust of the earth, You shall spread abroad to the west and to the east and to the north and to the south. And in you and your offspring shall all the families of the earth be blessed. Verse 15. Behold, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go and will bring you back to this land. For I will not leave you until I have done what I've promised you.
So he has this, Jacob has this dream, and God tells him, here's what I'm going to do. And so that's going to involve him returning to this land. What's so special about this land that he's going to return to? It's the land of promise. That, God had promised, first of all, to who? To Abraham. It's this land of promise to Abraham, and God, throughout the course of Abraham's descendants and their history, God reminds them of the promise he's made that he's going to fulfill that. And then Dallas, go ahead. You're right there. Read verse 20 and 21.
Then Jacob made a vow, saying, God will be with me and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat, clothing to wear, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, and the Lord shall be my God.
Okay. So if God will do this, and the Lord's going to be my God, and I'm not sure that expresses doubts on his part. He's just saying that God's going to be my God, and I guess that could be debatable, but how does all this relate to ultimately Jacob getting a wife, as far as the wife herself? As far as this wife who he's going to get, he ends up with both Leah and Rachel, and at some point he's going to have to leave this land where they've grown up, right? He's going to leave. So what could Jacob say to them when it comes time to leave? Yeah, we're going back home. I had this dream, and God says, here's this promise I've made, and so I need you to come back, and I need you. It would be important for Jacob to be able to tell his wife, or in this case wives, that here's what God's will is. Here's what God said. That would, if they are God-fearing women, that would have an impression on them. Thoughts or comments?
I wonder if they would have known just the story of Rebecca.
Yeah, that's a thought. Sometimes those things were known, right? And if they knew about Rebecca leaving and going to be Isaac's wife, that could have an impression as well. So we get to chapter 29, and these next few chapters we're introduced to Laban and Leah and Rachel. And so in chapter 29, Jacob is on his journey, and he comes to a well. I'd like for us to read the first 10 verses. If we got another person to read. Okay, Mark.
29, 1 to 10.
Yes.
Then Jacob went on his journey and came to the land of the people of the east. As he looked, he saw a well in the field, and behold, 3 flocks of sheep lying beside it. For out of that well the flocks were watered. The stone on the well's mouth was large, and all the flocks were gathered there. The shepherd would roll the stone from the mouth of the well and water the sheep, and put the stone back in its place over the mouth of the well. Jacob said to them, My brothers, where do you come from? They said, We are from Haran. He said to them, Do you know Laban, the son of Nahor? They said, We know him. He said to them, Is it well with him? They said, It is well. And see, Rachel his daughter is coming with the sheep. He said, Behold, it is still high day. It is not time for the livestock to be gathered together, water the sheep, and go to pasture. But they said, We cannot until all the flocks are gathered together, and the stone is rolled from the mouth of the well. Then we water the sheep. While he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. Now as soon as Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his mother's brother, the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, Jacob came near and rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. Okay, so Jacob's first meeting with Rachel, and Leah was going to follow not long after that, Laban and Leah. But
we're gonna lead up and talk about these events in just a second. Who was the older sister? Leah? How do we know Leah was the older? The scripture tells us in, okay, you look at verse 16, verse 26, whenever Leah is given first. So verse 16, verse 26, and that may be significant in some respects. Who here has siblings, other siblings? A lot of us, okay. Is there, what kind of relationship is there between, just say, older and younger ones sometimes? Jealousy can be part of that relationship. Competition. I've got a brother that's 3 years older, and there was competition when I was growing up. There can be jealousy. And I only mention that because as we unfold and think about what happens with Leah and Rachel and Jacob, and we might see, we're trying to put ourselves in their shoes, not just Jacob's, but in Leah's shoes and Rachel's shoes, and trying to understand how they would feel at different times. The text doesn't always tell us how they feel. Sometimes there's a point in time whenever God tells us about a character and how they're feeling, like how whenever Cain and Abel had the sacrifices and how Cain was feeling. But there's questions we're going to ask that will at least help, cause us to think about maybe how they were feeling, might have been feeling different in these different situations. But so Leah's the older, Rachel's the younger, and we just read these first 10 verses, and we asked this question here concerning Rachel. Do these verses give us any insight into any positive characteristics that Rachel might have? Do we learn anything about Rachel in what we just read? She's a shepherdess. Okay, there's a good point. It shows that she's responsible. She's caring. A shepherd would be caring. At least a shepherd, as they shepherd sheep like they should, would be a caring person. Person of responsibility. A hard worker. I think a hard worker is there. Brave, yeah. Fighting off wild animals, and even perhaps, was Rachel pretty or ugly? Yeah, she evidently a pretty woman, and maybe fighting off some kind of advances from men if she's out there on her own.
Inside and out.
Okay. Beautiful in form, physical form, or you're thinking beyond physical form? Yeah. 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 I think that's true. I'm not sure if that's exactly what that means, but I think that's true of the person Rachel. Whose sheep were they? Were they her sheep? Her father's sheep? Does that tell us anything? You got part of this family unit? Are you being a servant for your family? Hey, Lord, make me a servant. Or is she being a servant for her family? I think those are some positive characteristics that that we see in Rachel, even in this particular text. A hardworking person, a person that takes on, is responsible, a person that's caring, a person that's serving others, doing what she can, even for the family unit. So that all speaks well of her. Any other thoughts about her in this? So Jacob gets to this well, and there are 3 flocks that are evidently waiting to be watered. I think I wrote this out, and even on the. So you got these 3 flocks that are waiting to be watered, and Jacob makes the point that there's still some daylight left. Why not just go ahead and water the sheep and then take them back out to pasture. And what's the response that Jacob gets? Yeah, there's evidently some kind of local agreement that that you have that you need to do what? You need to wait for what? Wait for the other whatever other flocks are coming. Wait for them, and then be watered. And maybe it's just thought of wait for them to come, and then they can all be watered and go back out to pasture. Or maybe by that time it'd be time to settle in of nighttime. I'm not sure which that would be. But they're saying that no, we can't, we don't roll the stone away to the mouth of that guards the mouth of that the entrance of that water. We don't roll that stone away until all the flocks are gathered. And then Jacob sees Rachel coming, and what does he do? He goes and rolls the stone. You ever wonder how big that stone was? You ever wonder if maybe Jacob was somebody to be impressed with physically, possibly? But he goes and rolls the stone. Why do you think he rolls the stone away?
That she was Laban's daughter.
Okay, he knows who this is. Is he trying to impress her? Is he trying to get in her good graces? Is he trying to be helpful? There's this rule or agreement that he never agreed to. Doesn't make sense to him, so he's just going to go ahead and help her water the sheep. Got your comments?
Well, we can do things more for family when you can, and it was his mom's brother, family. I don't understand why they want to wait to water all the sheep one time. Looks to me like do it as they came, unless they're afraid the well's going to go dry or something.
Yeah. I don't either. There may be something we don't know there, or there may be some kind of sense of fair play here. I don't know either. But that was a rule that evidently the locals had that's mentioned here. How do you think Jacob is feeling when he meets Rachel? That's one of the questions, part A there. Pardon? Emotional, yeah. Would he be excited? Yeah, yeah.
A male being a pretty woman.
Yeah, first of all, you've got the excitement of seeing a relative, right? That you're about to get to. You've got a connection here to the person that you need to get to, which is Laban. Okay, so there's that excitement there. But probably even more so, as Linda mentioned, you hear somebody that's a beautiful woman. He's single. Would there be an interest there? Well, most likely there's an interest there. There's a thought there about, I came here to get a wife. Could she be the one? I would think that that's probably on his mind as well.
People particularly, whether that is their purpose, is to go find a wife. I don't know the young people today so much think about that. It just kind of happens.
Maybe some do and some don't. I don't know. Yeah. What was... She's pointing up here, guys. I don't know why, but what was the what was kind of like the custom of that day and time, or the way of life of that day and time? You find a partner and you marry and you have children and so forth, and yeah.
But I think so something that they have in common.
I would think he would have that.
Something
Yeah.
that they knew in it. I mean,
said that like when he was working for Laban, that it didn't even seem like 7 years because they probably had so much in common and seen each other, and so it's a lot of love at first sight type.
Yeah, there could have been. And so we're kind of talking about Jacob toward Rachel, but we also asked the question about how might Rachel be feeling. We read up to verse 10. Verse 11 says, then Jacob kissed Rachel and lifted his voice and wept. And of course, this wouldn't be some kind of sexual kiss, would it? It would be a relative kiss, or however you probably a kiss on the cheek. Anyway, that's what kind of kiss we're talking about. Jacob told Rachel that he was a relative of her father and that he was Rebekah's son, and she ran and told her father. So how would Rachel be? How would Rachel be feeling? And maybe Robin just touched on it. Maybe she sees this man roll this stone back, and who waters her flock? Does Jacob water her flock? I think that's what the text indicates. Jacob waters her. So this man rolls it and waters her flock, and it doesn't appear that she necessarily knows who he is yet. If she doesn't, then she may be thinking, "What's this strange man doing?" Or he's trying to help me. And there may also be an interest there of a man who's able to roll this stone away, and etc. But then at some point he does tell her who he is. And so how do you think she's feeling now? Excited, I think, would be part of that. I mean, here's somebody that's your cousin, and you at least you're related to him, and of course it's not, back in that day and time, it's not the same thing as me today thinking I'm going to marry my cousin. It's a different world then. But here's this person that's your relative that's been living hundreds of miles away, and now you're just getting to meet them. So I would think excitement would be part of that.
Treating somebody just from a far distance away, not knowing anything about them, learn who they are, find out through your family. Yeah, just interested in their background. Yeah, intrigued, interested in the background. I just saw on YouTube, I don't know, it just caught my eye, this family of maybe 6 altogether. I don't remember for sure how many kids they had, but they had. What caught my eye is that it said that they were going to compare their life in California that they had been living to moving to Tennessee. They moved to Knoxville, Tennessee. And anyway, it was interesting to me to think about some of what they described. I mean, they moved from California. Years ago, this husband's grandfather had lived in Tennessee, and they moved to California for a better life. And at that point in time, I think it was a better life for them as far as their circumstances and all. And now this grandson is moving his family out of California to Knoxville, Tennessee for a better life. And he was talking about some of the differences, and that's what Dallas made me think about. You were thinking about somebody from a different area and some of the differences. But he said he's still taking pictures of the gas pumps here and sending to his friends in California because they're paying twice as much. Of course, there's a whole lot of other stuff involved in that, but it was interesting to me just to hear about some of the differences in living in California versus living here in Tennessee, and I can see. I mean, you didn't in this day and time. You don't have the automobiles, right? You don't have the fast travel and going from here to there and being all these. I mean, sometimes you might meet a person and they're from this particular area, and it would be of interest to you, because you've never been there. You've never been able to travel there yourself. And so I can certainly see that would be part of the excitement and curiosity, especially since when she finds out that this person's a relative. Other thoughts?
Talk about his age. Rolling the stone away, if he's 77 or 40-some or whatever. Not a young man. I think Leah and Rachel are younger. Not be married yet.
Yeah, some of the I'm trying to remember, but some of what I read listed Rachel possibly a few years younger than Jacob. Cousins are probably in the same age range, with maybe a few years separating from them. But if they are older, that it might even be more on their mind as far as thinking about having a mate, etc. But so we kind of thought about, even though the text doesn't really specify exactly what these individuals were thinking or feeling, but I think it is interesting and good to think about it and think of what might put yourself in their shoes. But we continue reading. Let me get somebody to read verse 13 through 20. Somebody else. Laura, you have that one right there? Okay. Let me clarify Genesis 29 if somebody didn't get it yet. I was just clarifying for everybody else. Genesis 29 verse 13 if y'all wasn't sure where we're at.
Through 17?
Through 20.
So when Laban heard the news of Jacob, his sister's son, he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. Then he related to Laban all these things. Laban said to him, "Surely you are my bone and my flesh," and he stayed with him a month. Then Laban said to Jacob, "Because you are my relative, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what shall your wages be?" Now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. And Leah's eyes were weak, but Rachel was beautiful of form and face. Now Jacob loved Rachel, so he said, "I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel." Laban said, "It is better that I give her to you than to give her to another man. Stay with me." So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of his love for her.
Okay. So is Laban excited to see Jacob? Why might he be excited? A couple of reasons. we got somebody else to help out, right? Would be one, perhaps one thing. And again, this is my nephew. There's a relationship here of family, and this marriage arrangement is made. How long has Jacob been with Laban at this point in time when this marriage arrangement is made? What? A month? Yes. A month. How does Jacob feel about Rachel? Yeah, get back to what Robin, I think, said earlier. Sometimes you see this person and you have almost like an immediate love. And we're not necessarily even just talking about an attraction, which I think would be part of it, but something that goes deeper than that. So Laban makes a deal with Jacob, and Laban wants to know what your wages will be, and so Jacob says what? 7 years. 7 years. We asked this question: who suggested what wages Jacob would earn as he worked for Laban? It was Jacob or Laban? Jacob. Leah's this older daughter, and if I would assume that she knows about this, knows what's going on, how would she feel? How would you feel if you're Leah? Left out? Possibly left out. Yeah. Going against the customs of the land. It could be, we don't know for sure what Leah was thinking. Maybe there was such a relationship between Leah and Rachel. Leah says, "Oh, I'm happy for you." That could be, but on the other side of the coin, it could be that Leah's thinking, I'm getting left out. I should be the one. There could be some jealousy there, some competition there. But the text doesn't tell us anything about how they're feeling. We're just trying to understand the situation best we can. Yes? Yeah. How did Kathy, we're in Genesis 29, for those who maybe just came in. How did Kathy start that out? if Laban were an honest man, but he proves not to be right, and he proves to be somewhat deceitful. He proves to be a person who looks out for himself, not for others. When we continue reading, we see Laban as a man who's taking advantage of Jacob for Laban's own benefit. But Jacob suggests, let me work for how many years? 7 years.
Sure that this was just a custom of the land, that the oldest one had to be married off, or something in scripture that I know of that God, that there were new things set down by God, I don't think.
No,
Therefore, this
I-
looking out for his oldest daughter.
Laban points out in verse 26, it is not the practice in our place to marry off the younger before the firstborn. Now, as far as whether God had made any regulations, we don't have any. Again, when we go through the book, when we go from the beginning creation, Adam, to Moses, how many years do we have? Around 2,500 years, and yet we just got a few chapters here in Genesis that cover those 2,500 years. So there's a whole lot of things that God could have stipulated that's not recorded. And I wouldn't dare make any kind of point on something God hasn't said. But so we don't, to answer your question, there's nothing that I know of that in Genesis where God stated this firstborn has to be married first. Now, as we read throughout history and we get to the history of the children of Israel and we see the rights of the firstborn, then one possible conclusion is that, yes, this is one of the rights of the firstborn, even in this day and time. Other thoughts or comments on that question? Yeah.
They don't get chastised by God, that we see directly, but they do have problems. All of them, even David, with the plurality.
Yeah, that's one thing. Whenever Regina mentioned that the one thing that bothers her is the plurality of wives, and whenever Jesus is clarifying things to the Jewish religious leaders, Matthew 19, what does he say? Because the hardness of your heart, Moses permitted such and such. There's some things that I would say God allowed, although it wasn't in keeping with his will. Actually, it says that at times that they say ignorance God winked at. We've talked about Abraham and Sarah before, and when they laughed in Abraham's deceit with Sarah, just tell him you're my sister, and then Sarah laughs about the thought of her becoming becoming a mother in her old age, and then she denies and says I didn't laugh, and so she lies, and we kind of looked at this thought that God has always condemned lying, but in those particular passages we don't have any detail about how God responded specifically to that lie. Maybe he did. Or maybe he just winked at it in one sense and just let it slide. But we, in saying all of that, we're not making any kind of point to say that we can come to some kind of conclusion about things by saying God probably said this. No, we can't do that. But there's just a whole lot of things that could have taken place between God and mankind that he didn't choose to record for us. And back to Linda's question here, I don't know of anything that in Genesis which God would have stipulated to those individuals that when it comes to your firstborn, your daughter has to be married first. Yeah, that's the other thing. That's the other thing I was wanting us to think about. I love Linda. I ain't waiting no 7 years. 7 years. Yeah. So here's the question. why did he stipulate, I mean, why 7 years? I'm not talking about the exact amount, but why not, I'll work for you and so forth, and, I mean, why 7 years? Does that tell us anything about, well, let me ask it this way. Is that a great price to pay in one sense? It's, 7 years of your life working for somebody. Does that tell us anything more about what Jacob thinks about Rachel? Yeah, I think it does tell us. I mean, it tells, I mean, the text tells us that, we read it in verse 20, Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed to him but a few days because of his love for her. He really, really loved her. But I think the fact that Jacob suggested 7 years, in my mind, that's a high price. Whatever, I mean, Mark, whatever you make, 7 years of your salary, and you're gonna give that to marry Laura, and in one sense, I mean.
The opposite, like, give money to the people to take their daughters usually. I thought that was the usual, but I don't know if he was trying to, I don't know. I also had a couple other thoughts. So do you think that Rebecca knew that Laban was still like worshiping idols, that he hadn't come out of all the paganism yet? Because he definitely still had idols because Rachel took them, and he's definitely still divining, like in 30:27, he's divining. So he's still doing pagan practices, and I just think, was it the best thing to send him up there?
Yeah.
Like, because the choices that Laban made for that family, that made their they rough on them.
You got.
I'm trying to teach us, why it's important to just one poor family, because look at what can happen.
Everybody, do I need to repeat? Everybody hear Laura's question? I'm not sure. Okay. My one thought is this: you've got a choice between ungodly people who have these multiple gods. They don't for the most part, they don't recognize the true and living God, versus one who does recognize the true and living God. But a second thought is, when do we have, at least recorded, when do we have it stated, "Thou shalt have no other gods before me"? Yeah, Exodus 20, the law of Moses. I mean, that has, I'm not saying that's the first time that applied, but God has always wanted man to have no other gods before him, but in this particular period of time, it seems to me that these individuals, like Laban, Rachel, they don't have that clear understanding of it's only God, and you shouldn't have this other little thing. And maybe they do, but I'm not sure they have that full understanding about that. And I would suspect that God, that's one of those things that God had given to them concerning His will, that's not necessarily recorded in detail, that they should have known that. But I don't know. It may just be one of man's failures in that part. Other thoughts or comments on that?
To me, she was more concerned with the bloodline, because Abraham sent back to that land, and then kept it all in the family, and then she's wanting, because apparently the Hittite women and Ishmael's daughter did not make her happy at all. So
Yep.
there's something about the bloodline, I would think, even despite, because didn't God call Abraham out of Haran partly because his father was serving idols, or I know there was some, he had idol worship somewhere in there when Abraham was called.
Yeah, I don't know if the text indicates that was the reason that God called him out or not, but I do think you touched on a valid point, that that there's this thought of keeping a bloodline pure, and so go back and marry among your relatives.
And Jacob is also not marrying Laban. He's marrying Rachel and Leah. And one of the things that we learn about them is they don't have to be like their parents, and they choose to change and to follow God later on with Jacob. And even the sons of Laban in chapter 30 are like, he's taken over all of the land. He has everything that we're supposed to have. And God is blessing them because they're choosing to, even though they're amongst people who are liars and diviners, they're choosing God and to do right things instead of, for the most part, instead of follow along with everyone else.
Yeah, and I think that's how I have viewed things. That for the most part they are serving God. They have some troubles at times, especially when it comes to this area of having idols. They haven't got that totally right yet, but they are people who understand about God and who are serving God. And of course, if you got a choice between that or Esau's wives, you're gonna choose to be married among your relatives, God's people in that sense. Other thoughts? Yes.
With the, they refer to a lot, like your God has blessed you, that blessed me, and this, it was still worship idols. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I know I'm saying that they knew God and that he was doing better, and then yet they still worship idols.
We, even today, we know God, we serve God. Can we be guilty of joining in some of the world's idols at times? Yeah, I mean, that can be true of us. There can be things that we place too much importance on, or maybe even that we let come between us and God. Is that the first bell? Okay, I heard that one. That could be a very similar situation. I guess that's how I view things from what I understand of that day and time. Just like what Tommy said, they're serving God. They know who God is, but they still get involved in some things that they've been that's part of their society or their surroundings. That they anyway. Yes. Yeah.
It's possible to be a bad parent, and it's also possible to be a good son or daughter to that bad parent and follow through with your obligations, follow through with the things that you're supposed to do. And even if you have bad family members, even if you have people that want to deceive you, and we see that in Rachel and Leah especially.
No. So Tom makes the point that can a bad parent have a good child? Yes. Can a good parent have a bad child? Yes. Ezekiel 18 especially teaches that, right? But anyway, so there's some reasons, some valid reasons for wanting Jacob to go and be married with somebody that's among his relatives, somebody that actually that does know God and is striving to live for God, even though there's some issues with some of that. Okay, we'll stop there. I want to wait and maybe talk about this other question 6 next class period. So we'll hold off till then, and we will have a break.